It's Lynn Bardowski, founder at $1 Million Party Girl, with a brand new episode of Social Girl Live. We are talking Zoom parties. I have a flow for you that will help you get results when you're partying on Zoom, right? It's gone mainstream now, and I know a lot of you have tried it. Let me know in the comments, yes or no, are you doing Zoom parties? But there's some things you need to do to get results. For those of you that don't know, I literally wrote the book on how to do an effective Facebook party. I created my own strategy, a very unique formula, and it's in my book, Facebook Party Secrets of $1 Million Party Girl. The rest is history. This is a very effective online party that works. I've actually customized this for quite a few direct selling companies. For those of you that are lucky enough to have it, I know you are killing it when it comes to Facebook parties, right? And so people would say, well, what about Zoom? And I was kind of always the one that said, sounds good, but think about your customers. Are they going to know how to do it? And until mid-March of 2020, the answer was no. Most of your typical customer would have to download an app. The second you tell people they've got to do an extra step and it sounds technical, you're putting up a barrier. It's a door that they got to go through. And the more doors they got to go through, the less it's going to be effective, right? And the rule of marketing is go where your audience is. And that's why Facebook has been the place to party online, because that's where they are, right? Even more so today. That's where people are hanging out. And so that all changed this year. And now Zoom is mainstream. There's a whole new lingo now going on, like Zooming, and all these new words are being created. I think it's still a great idea to have a Facebook group where your party peeps are coming together. All right. That being said, let's say you're doing that. You could put the Zoom link there. It's a great way for you to communicate. You can mark it as an announcement, all those things. Then you meet on Zoom. Well, the first thing you need to do, and this is a little trick that works at home parties, ask those party guests to bring or do something. Bring or do something when they come to the Zoom party. So for example, if it was summertime, I might have at let's say an indoor or an outdoor at-home pool party, I would ask the guests to wear their favorite flip-flops, or you might call them sandals or something else, okay? Depending on where you live in the country or world. And it just creates a lot of excitement. It's like, oh, I gotta wear my favorite flip-flops. First of all, they're excited that that is the attire for the party. And we would do a really fun, like a best flip-flop or sandal contest. And the party guests would vote on like who had the cutest ones, and they would win a prize, right? Just something silly. But when you ask people to bring or do something, it creates a little fear of missing out. It's like, ooh, I'm gonna miss it if I don't go. It also helps them remember to come. That's the worst that happens. You have this party date and time set up for your Zoom party, and people forget about it. And they're like, oh, I missed it. Well, if you ask them to do or bring something, they are less likely to forget because you're building anticipation, okay? It also it's almost like your icebreaker, and it helps you to break the ice and increase interaction during the party. All right, so here's some examples for you guys that I have in my queue. So let's say you sell jewelry, okay? Ask them to come to the Zoom party wearing their favorite shirt, all right? That alone, like, who doesn't want to show up to something wearing their favorite piece of clothing? It's like, yes, I got to wear it, okay? And then you can customize it, because you're selling jewelry, based on their neckline. So some might have crew neck, some might have boat neck, some might have off the shoulder, I'm wearing a V-neck right now. So you could literally help every single one of those party guests and say, oh my gosh, Lynn, you're wearing a pink V-neck. And here is the piece of jewelry that goes perfect with that neckline. Have you ever tried whatever goes with that neckline? I have no idea, but you guys do, right? If you don't, Google it, and then you'll become the expert. If you sell skincare and you've got samples, you can send those out ahead of time, and your party guests could actually be you. They could be trying out the sample during the party and then sharing that feedback. How does it feel? Right? All those great things. They're talking more than you. And that's when it's a successful party. And that's also true for home parties. You don't want to be like the Charlie Brown teacher because that's just not fun, right? The more other people are talking, the better. Or if you have a company that's been around, you know, that has a real long history, let's say Pampered Chef, Tupperware, you know, bring your oldest piece of Tupperware. Like that would just be so fun because everybody's got one in their cabinet somewhere, right? Probably passed down. And you probably do that at home parties, right? So this definitely translates to Zoom parties. Number 2, you want to make sure you have 3 stories ready to go. Storytelling is going to be a big part of the Zoom party. It is what draws people in. Your stories are compelling, and it's the reason people say yes. It's the reason people buy. It's the reason people book, and it's the reason they become part of your team. So what are the 3 stories? One is your story. That's your sponsoring story. One is a product story, and one is a host story. And so if you haven't already been working on this, if you've, maybe you've never heard this idea before, hopefully you've been getting training on this from your company. I know a lot of companies train on storytelling, and a really effective way to do this is to use the chat feature in Zoom as you're storytelling. Of course, you want to be asking questions, and you want the party guests to be answering, and also asking you questions. So one of the things you could do during your storytelling part is to reward interaction and questions, and give people instructions, like ask in the chat. That way you don't have too much noise and interruption happening, which is a challenge on a Zoom party. It gives you more control. And then you can answer as they're coming up in the chat. It also helps you identify leads, because when people are asking you questions in the chat, you can go back and look at that chat and say, oh, I missed this. She was asking about this product, or so-and-so was asking about the host program. I didn't even see it, right? And that can help you identify some leads. An easy way to do this, if you're following my Facebook party formula, I have something called a prize point tracker. Well, have them track their own points. I'm a big fan of that because you don't have time, right? And you could even put this as a graphic or PDF in your group, and they can print it out, or they can just, do it on a piece of paper and track their own points. And they can get points for bringing something or doing something, whatever that was that you asked them to bring or do. They can get points for asking questions, and then they add up all the points at the end. So reward what you want people to do as you're telling those stories. And then number 3, last but not least, you need to be using a Google form. Just because it's on Zoom doesn't mean you shouldn't be creating that virtual door prize slip, which is the big part of my Facebook party formula, and where you get so many of the results. So because they're participating in the chat, this kind of all ties together with a nice little bow. They're looking at the chat, right? And so that way you can put your Google form, AKA door price slip, link right in the chats. You can put your shopping link in there. You can put all your clickable links in there. Also, of course, in the group with ordering instructions. And that way, your call to action, of course, you have to ask people for what you want them to do, is to fill out the Google form. And that's where you'll have their wish list. That's where you'll have your booking questions. And that's where you'll have your sponsoring questions. And then your job is to follow up and get all of the results, right? Some people will shop during the party, but what about those people that don't? What about the people that were interested and either weren't comfortable to say yes? Not everybody wants to put their hand in the air, right? Or voice their opinion when other people are there. Or maybe, they thought about it later and were like, oh, I think I want to learn more about that. But now it's over. So with the door price slip, it's not over. Now you can get all the information and do the follow-up to capture all the leads that you might have missed during that time that you were together on Zoom. Never, ever, ever party without it. You can even have, and this is what I recommend you do, have a question on your Google form be, how many, add up your points from the prize point tracker. How many did you get? And so right there, they're adding up their points and entering them on the Google form, or you can even give them 10 points for filling out the Google form, right? It's done. So those are the 3 things. Make sure you ask people to bring or do something. That makes it about them, and that helps you really customize the party for what they want, they need, the problems that you're helping them solve, what they're excited about. Have your 3 stories ready to go so it's not just a big commercial, right? It's more compelling, it's emotional. That's why people say yes. And then never ever party without that lead generator, your Google form.